She had dumps like a truck, truck, truck. Thighs like what, what? Baby, move your butt, butt. I think I'll sing it again. She had dumps like a truck, truck, truck. Thighs like what, what? All night long. Let me see that thong.
How do some couples continuously elevate their passion? Is there truly only one perfect person for us? Or maybe what we practice and how we think will ultimately nurture or destroy a relationship? Crank up the volume while we dive into the depths of love, passion, and sex to uncover simple concepts that will both surprise you and transform your life forever. Welcome to Intimacy Exposed. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Intimacy Exposed. I'm your host, Crystal.
Damn, she looks scandalous. That thong.
And that's John. Welcome to an episode of Intimacy Exposed. This is Let's Talk About Sex, Baby.
I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about songs when you say that. But yes, let's talk
You
about
mean
sex.
songs?
That too.
I have to say, if you hear some, heavy breathing going on during this episode, there's no funny, kinky stuff going on. We are focused on the task at hand. We are professionals, but we have a little one sleeping. So that's what it is in the background.
He's literally strapped to her chest right now. We're on holidays, and she's making it work. Just finished feeding him, so if you hear some heavy panting, no, this is not an intro to our sex life. This is him sleeping.
We're just talking about sex. We're not introducing you to anything too intimate. Anyways, all right, so sex. It's taken us a few episodes to really, I don't know if get up the nerve or just be ready to talk about this, but I like we have an episode about it. So, sex. We all literally wouldn't be here without it. We wouldn't be alive, like if we didn't have procreation. But sex is a whole lot more than just that.
Yeah, I think the word procreation is very unsexy.
It is.
I think it's just the basic task to produce an offspring.
I actually picture two bugs from a National Geographic photographer or something, and I see two bugs sitting on top of each other doing their procreation. And so let's use a different term for that.
Well,
love making. I picture Barry White singing right now.
Yeah, I know. I think I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty confident humans are the only species that has sex for pleasure. Maybe it's penguins or dolphins that also do that.
I was actually thinking of dolphins too.
It's a conversation I remember having years ago, or a fact I've heard. I can't confirm, but basically we're almost the only things on this planet that do it for fun, not just survival.
And this is one of those things that you could probably Google and have more information than what we're giving you.
We're also in an area without reception, so
crap. All right. So, yeah, big topic. Massive component of a relationship. Huge.
Yeah, I mean, what is the difference between an intimate relationship and a relationship?
I have the answer. Is it intimacy?
It is, in fact, intimacy. Yes. And part of that intimacy, a big part of that, is sex. So I'm glad we're talking about this today because it's a huge part of a relationship, and I think it's something that doesn't get a lot of conversation. I would say the grocery list gets more conversation about, like, what should we have for dinner next week, and how should we cook our chicken, and that recipe is kind of getting old. Let's try a new recipe. I would say that far more effort and energy goes into what you put in your mouth.
Okay, might edit that one out too. We're not sure. No, this might be an X-rated episode, and so there may be some things we'd say on this episode that we won't on others. But that's the fun in it, right?
Yes. But I'm serious. I think a lot more effort goes into other tasks that are important, but I'd say this is a massively important one. So
There probably should be way more conversation about it, right?
there absolutely should be
Yeah.
way more conversation about it.
What are you talking about at your dinner table? Yeah, so let's dive in.
Absolutely.
So, why is sex so important? We've kind of come up with like splitting it into two different types of needs that we have. The first I'm going to talk about is a physiological need. So, the actual physical need to have sex. When I was in nursing, I took a class. I can't remember what the class was called, but it went kind of deep into how we're programmed. You know, like not to bring up necessarily and talk about it like back in caveman days, but it's programmed into us to have sex so that we can carry on our DNA, so we can reproduce, have children, have offspring, and let our DNA, in a legendary sense, kind of carry on. So there's that. And I do think that there's a big component of that still kind of trails along in our brains. Maybe we don't really think about it. I'm pretty sure that when we're young, we're meeting people that are good looking and we're kind of letting our hormones drive us. The last thing we're thinking about is, I really need to deposit some of my DNA and let it grow so that my DNA carries on in this world successfully.
Okay. I think the word deposit and procreate, both of those words are banned from this podcast.
Okay, no more deposit. Deposit.
That is a horrible word.
Agreed. Okay, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like, we don't think like that when we're having sex until you're maybe ready and married, or, in a committed relationship and you're ready to have children. Then you're thinking, okay, well, I'd like to have a child. I'd like to expand my family, carry on my DNA.
Yeah, I still don't think it's that conscious of a thought. I don't think we're actively considering the next generation. We're definitely thinking about having a family and having children and bringing life into this world, expanding our family. But a lot of it, I think, is driven by our ancestral primal brain, the part of it that does encourage us to have sex and to extend our lineage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Then there's another physiological need, the big O, orgasm. This is a huge part of life. I think that it's very taboo to talk about, but, if we're to look at it as where does it stand on the level of importance with other components that are necessary in life, eating, breathing, other components of surviving. I don't know. Do we need orgasm to survive?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm asking you, and I knew I would get that answer. But, it doesn't seem like we would need it to survive, but go without something like that, a component of your life, for a really long time. And I'm sure that, it gets stressful. When you think about it, it ignites pleasure centers in your brain. It's a natural painkiller by the release of, hormones and neurotransmitters. So there's a natural healing process that goes on with this. So yeah, I'm sure it's a necessary part of life. Another component of the physiological sense of sex is the physique of yourself, the physique of your partner, how you look, what you're attracted to. A lot of studies have been done that kind of look at why it is that we're attracted to our partners or potential partner out there. I remember learning about, when a man looks at a woman who's got, wider hips and a round butt and a symmetrical face and long shiny hair. There's all these things. We don't really break it apart in the physique and say, oh, I really like the round rump on that one. Like that almost sounds like cattle.
Okay. Word number 3 that is banned from the podcast today. Rump.
Come on, I like rump. Rump is like it makes me think of that, my hump. my hump, my hump, my hump.
Rump?
I don't think you get to trump my words anymore. I think that I'm going to veto that one. So rump stays. We don't we don't look at our partner's physique and break it down into all these little components. Like, I like that this looks like this. The reason that we're attracted to all these different areas of our partner, maybe for me looking at my husband, I like that he's got broad shoulders and he's got strong arms. But these are all things that in our heads, we've got this innate kind of built-in mechanism that makes us look at this as that's great DNA to add to my offspring. Or maybe a man is looking at a woman thinking that is a great physique to be able to carry my child. We don't think about it like that, but we are attracted to certain body parts and certain, rumps. We're attracted to certain things for certain reasons. So it's interesting when it comes to the physiological needs and what's built into our brains.
I think what Crystal's been trying to say since the podcast started is sex is pretty damn good. And she might be coming at it from a, more of an academic background. She is sexy. That I can say for sure. But rump is going. It's going in the garbage.
I don't know. I like rump. I'm going to keep it. Okay, you move on.
All right. So moving on from the rump, we're talking about the psychological needs. So what does sex do to a couple? Like what experience changes or gets enhanced? What is the net benefit of having sex, of having connected, intimate love making or sex? Well, I think for sure it creates a much deeper connection, strengthens passion, creates a bond between two people that is very rare. I think that might be the big difference between sex and love making, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's something that, to circle back what I talked about earlier about the difference between a relationship and an intimate relationship, this is something that you probably only share with one person or more, depending on your preferences. No judgment. But that bond is very unique. And the way that you strengthen that bond is through vulnerability, is through connection, is through effort, is through transparency, communication. If you treat it like it is so special, because I truly believe it is, it will continue to flourish and grow throughout your entire life and relationship. What I think happens, and I say this confidently because you see the passion in a relationship die over years, is that the most amount of effort is made at the beginning of the relationship, and then it falls into a bit of a routine. And you don't want to fall into a routine. And if you have, that's okay. Recognize it. Get on the same page as your partner and work to get out of that relationship. Because passion absolutely can be reignited.
You and I might be picking at each other or kind of not really fighting, but, we're maybe a little shorter with each other. And then all of a sudden it'll be like an effective fighting strategy. And one of us will kind of recognize, what am I feeling inside? And it's that we haven't had sex in a while.
Usually it's Crystal who says to me, I don't remember what you say exactly. Do you remember?
I know what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, it's usually me who gets a little, I don't know.
Snappy.
Well, I was thinking snappy. I think it's more subtle than that. But
no, it's not.
Okay. Okay. I definitely will wear the crown on this one. I think this is more of a one-way street. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some snappiness coming on, and then I'll think, what, who peed in his cornflakes or something? Did I do something? Like, why is he so, is something stressful at work? And then I'll realize that it's been a while since we've had sex, and then I'll say something, and I can't remember what I say, and then all of a sudden we realize, we plan it, and we have sex, and then whatever that snappiness is like it's on a ship sailing away.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. One thing that I remember when I was going through school, there would be times where I'd be feeling like I'm being stretched in many different directions. You know, I'm stressed with school. I've got work on the side. I've got, my house to kind of tend to in the way that makes me happy. And then, I'm realizing that I'm kind of leaving us out. And when I realized that we weren't really connecting on that level very much, I would think, well, I don't have time for that. I'm too stressed. But then after you actually engage in a passionate encounter with your partner, you realize that it's actually a stress reliever. So sometimes when you're feeling too stressed, having sex will relieve all that stress. And sometimes you don't feel like you have enough room in your brain to kind of make that effort. It's so worth it, because the stress reliever part and component of it is so worth it.
So to build on that, I would have said, until a few years ago, I would have said, well, I don't know, maybe that's more of a feminine energy thing. Maybe that's more of a quote unquote a woman characteristic, because you typically got, I'm not going to say more in your brain, but you're more aware of many things than men or masculine energy. Masculine energy is typically a little more laser focused and neglectful or ignorant of other things around, and it can be easier to forget and put things to the side. So, some of the guys out there might be saying like, well, I don't ever have a problem. That's not a problem with me. And then I started this other business years ago, and the psychological stress, the emotional stress, the taxation on my psyche did have an impact on my sex drive. And all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, like it's not just a black and white, men versus women kind of thing. Like, this is really affecting me. And, we caught it, we understood it, adapted to it, and it's not an issue anymore. But I think it depends on the circumstance. So some of you out there might be kind of laughing and saying like, that's not an issue for me. The world could be burning down and I can still be having sex. It's all good. But I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Now, why is it so difficult to talk about sex? There's so many barriers in our society, or, it could be your society, your culture, your religion. We'll get into this. But why is it so difficult to talk about sex? I personally had a real huge issue talking about sex with John when I first met him. I felt as though I was talking about something that was bad. And I do think that there was some barriers from religion to, not talking about it in my family and my household growing up, which is fine, like my parents, that's if that's what they chose. But I do think that I took it on as talking about sex being something that you just don't discuss. I never heard my parents talk about it. I never really heard other people in my family, like aunts and uncles or grandma or anything like that. I never heard anyone really speak about it in any kind of way other than, you have sex when you're married, and don't even talk about it, look at it, or touch it, or anything like that until then. So when I got to the point where I started to discuss certain components of sex with John, once we got together, I felt like it was kind of wrong. But I have to say, it was nice to kind of go through that difficult time of talking about it, and then getting to a point where we were comfortable, and I felt so cared for after I spoke and John heard, and we were able to kind of work through things that we needed to work through. And yeah, so there's so many barriers. There's personal barriers, however you personally feel about sex. And I think that that's influenced by maybe the society that you grew up in, the household you grew up in, the family values that have been influencing you in your environment since you were a kid. Religion is a big one. Religion very much dictates certain viewpoints on how you should be brought up to think about sex. Now, there's also influences from trauma or past relationships or experiences that could influence how you talk about sex, or how you don't want to, how you, basically everything to do with your sex life. So if you personally feel like there is something from your past that's negatively affecting your sex life currently, I would highly recommend to go talk to someone who's a professional in this area, someone you don't know, someone who's unbiased, who can listen to some things that you've maybe been through and talk to you about how to make it into a more positive situation. I'm not a professional. I can't really offer any advice. I don't know anything about that, but there are so many people out there so many professionals who can help you. So it's a good thing to discuss.
Yes. I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm just like, yes, talk about it. Yes, you have to. You have to bring up what you want. You have to challenge your values. You have to challenge your religious beliefs. You have to challenge your upbringing. I'm not saying you have to go against it. I'm not saying you have to disown it and change your opinion, but you have to question. You absolutely have to question. Because I'll use an analogy. If your parents served you mashed potatoes every single meal of every single day of your life, and you never communicated that you don't like mashed potatoes, or maybe you like yams instead, or maybe you like a little gravy on your potatoes, or maybe you like butter and salt and pepper. I don't know, whatever your preference is. Maybe you like a little sour cream on top, some chives and bacon bits. I'm not judging. Variety is the spice of life. But the way that you articulate that message is by communicating, is by saying, you know what, I'm good. I had enough potatoes that I think I want to try something else. Or, you know what, I'm really sick and tired of this. I can't do this anymore. I got to try this. I got to try that. Or I like my potatoes warmed up, or I like them fried.
Is this an analogy or is this actual real? Did your mom make you too many potatoes in life?
Well, we didn't have a lot of money, so probably, yeah. What I'm trying to say is you have to talk about sex. Whether you start off, like Crystal said, with a professional, whether you start off with your partner, circle back and listen to some of our other episodes. Episode 7 and 8 for part 1 and part 2 of Effective Fighting. That will give you the tools necessary in order to start a dialogue in your relationship. Not just about sex, but you should be doing that anyway. You have to talk about sex. Your model of the world is based on your experiences. It's based on your values and beliefs, like Crystal had mentioned, that come from your personal, society, religion, family upbringing, past experiences, positive or negative. But sex is a huge part of an intimate relationship, and one where a lot of disconnect happens. Again, we've talked about like the stress on a relationship and finances being, I think, the number 1 or 2 reason for divorce. Well, I'm sure a lack of passion or no sex or disconnect is right up there too. Talk about sex.
Actually, I think that finances and sex are the top 2 reasons for divorce and fighting in a relationship.
Okay. Well, there you go. We've just solved all the world's problems in their relationship if they can just figure out their finances and their sex.
2 episodes and the world is solved. No, but getting back to that, there's a few more reasons. Like maybe you've never discussed sex before and you just don't know how to get it started. Tearing off the Band-Aid, or even better, if you've never discussed sex with your partner before, start by talking to someone who, you're not having sex with. Start talking to someone about having sex. One of your best friends, your sister, your brother, someone who is not going to judge you. You can maybe even start in kind of, a fun, playful kind of way, like, different positions or, a funny thing that happened when you were having sex, and kind of just get like a soft, lighthearted conversation going. And then you can kind of slowly start to maybe ask more serious questions and just get the ball rolling in that direction, because to be able to start to talk about it is going to completely open up a different side of your relationship, actually. Sometimes it can be detrimental to our confidence because you may talk to someone about sex, hear what they're doing in their own sex life, and think maybe you're not adequate, you're not having sex that much. If someone tells you they're having sex every single day, there's a good chance that they're just maybe exaggerating, because that's a little bit much. It sounds desirable, but...
Or they're unemployed.
Oh, yeah, that's what you do when you're unemployed.
Yeah.
Sex all day.
Yeah. Just, I guess, as a caveat, make sure the person you're talking to is somebody that you should be taking their advice. Don't just talk to your brother or sister or best friend or whatever because they happen to be your brother, sister, or best friend. If they have a crappy relationship or they've never been in an intimate long-term relationship, you may not want to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. It's a good thing to kind of take into consideration. The nice thing about being able to talk about sex with someone who's not your partner, I guess, is to just kind of open it up and be able to have it flow out of your mouth and be able to kind of get some of your thoughts on the table. It's important that you consider advice or consider taking advice from someone who you admire in this area of life. So keep that in your mind. So next topic is considering, what if you're not in the mood for sex, but your partner is? I believe this is a pretty big area of concern because we're needing to consider two people's needs here. And if it was your choice and your partner wants to have sex and it's your choice and you do not, you maybe actually do have a headache or stressed or something's come up. If you're not in the mood and you make it happen and you don't get into it, it could be a disaster. And I guess the reason I say this is you don't want to be having sex if you're not putting effort in, if you're not getting into the mood, if you're not putting out good vibes. If you're just mechanically going through the process, you could really harm your relationship. So I think it is important that if you decide you cannot get to that place, meaning you're not in the mood and you're not going to, I would say maybe postpone it or maybe consider doing something that could get you into the mood.
Yeah, I would say that put in more effort. There's far too many automatic cop-out responses. I'm not in the mood. I'm too busy. The kids, I got this, stress, work, headache, blah, 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 blah. I hear excuses. A bulk of the time, those can all be eliminated. Whether through a slightly more preparation, whether through creative solutions, whether through just pushing your own comfort level. I'd say not all the time, because like Crystal said, sometimes you legitimately have a headache, or maybe the timing's not appropriate. Maybe you're running out the door in 5 minutes and you're already late and your partner's in the mood and it's like, okay, this really is not the time. Like I get it. There's times that it just doesn't work out, but I'd say more effort is needed on a regular basis. But that's where the communication comes from. And that's why, again, to echo, previous episodes, go back to episodes 7 and 8, effective fighting. Work through those tools, create a platform of dialogue so that you can communicate with your partner, because this is a very important part of your relationship and your life. And I don't think I'm naive in suspecting that this is where a lot of hurt feelings come from. This is where a lot of feelings of neglect or resentment or rejection come in, because one partner isn't speaking the same language as the other partner. It's not that the other partner maybe does want to have sex, but maybe one person is more of a morning person, one person is more of an evening person. Maybe one person has a career that's extremely demanding on certain days or parts of the year or month, and it changes the schedule. Like there are real things to take into consideration, and obviously you have to make a decision based on your own personal situation. It's not black and white, but what if you're not in the mood? We're talking about this and I'm kind of laughing because I'm sure this comes up a lot, and it's just an easy automatic response that society's kind of generated as like an acceptable thing to say. And I think it's a bunch of crap. Get creative. I don't think it's that hard. I do believe it involves a lot of communication. And I know from experience that Crystal and I have been through this. Like every couple out there has probably been through this. What if you're not in the mood? It's going to come up, but communicate about it, work around. If you keep trying a certain way and it's not working, then try a different way. The definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like, just get creative.
Yeah, one of the things that stand out mostly in our relationship that I think pertains to this is, you're crawling into bed at the end of the day. You're tired. It's been a long day. Maybe it's been a great day, but it doesn't mean it didn't take a lot of energy. This is the time where you both lay down next to each other, mostly naked, most likely. This is a great time for you to be having sex. But who wants to have sex when you're exhausted? You have to put energy in, just like you said, you have to get creative. You have to think about, you got to put your brain energy in. You got to put your physical energy in. You also have to think about, I can't say what you think about, but I try to think about, how do I feel sexy and how do I give off the vibes that I want to that attracts my husband. There's all these things that are going through your mind and your brain that take energy. So something that John and I actually changed about our sex life was we decided we would kind of surprise each other in the middle of the afternoon. We also have the type of life that is conducive to being able to do this. So I understand if you have a 9 to 5 kind of Monday to Friday job, maybe showing up at the office and show up at the office in a trench coat and close the door behind you and get it done.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I'm nodding my head here thinking, who cares? Walk into the office. Sally, the front receptionist, I need to talk to Tom right now. It's a family emergency. Take me to his office.
You rush into the door, through the door, you slam it behind you, you lock it, you shut all the blinds. Trench coat on the floor.
Exactly. Tom is going to lose his mind.
All right, so do that. But what I'm trying to say is there are other ways around it. You don't have to have all of your sexual encounters to be when you're exhausted and you've spent 3 hours trying to get little Jimmy into bed after his bath and then he threw up everywhere. Like, who wants to have sex after that? Plan differently. Maybe I'm not really a morning kind of person, but when it comes to this, that might be a new option if right before bed doesn't work.
And if little Jimmy is a nickname for something else, then,
Whoa, okay, now we're really crossing the line in X-rated. Maybe little Jimmy is the name for somebody, but anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that when you're not in the mood, it doesn't mean no, try again later. What it should mean is this doesn't seem to be working. How can we make it work? When can we make it work? Where can we make it work? Because it's very easy to just push it off, and push it off. We've had a couple of friends, discuss with us, probably more in private, not, in a conversation, all of us together, but about how it's been this long since they've had sex, or it's been, and that's really taxing on a relationship. The less sex that you're having, that means the less passionate you're becoming with each other. And it means that you're not connected on a level that is creating a world-class relationship. So it's something you want to keep tabs on that. You want to keep this on a bit of a short leash. You don't want to let it get away from you, because I'm pretty sure, we've just got a little one here who's 3 months old, but already I find it more difficult, right? Like if his needs are needing to be tended to, you can't just abandon a child and go and do what makes you happy. So it takes some planning, takes a little bit of creativeness, but you can make that a chore, or you can make it an interesting new part of life that's kind of fun.
Absolutely. Perspective is everything. If you look at it as a barrier, your mind is going to create a bunch of obstacles on how you cannot get it done. Versus if you say, this is an extremely great opportunity to challenge the way that I look at this. How can I create a solution? What kind of things am I not thinking about? Your brain will come to a completely different set of solutions.
Yeah, actually, what comes to mind right now is something that John and I have learned from our favorite guy, Tony Robbins. And it's, are you giving a situation one way to succeed and a million ways to fail? If you are, just change that around. Make a situation be able to succeed many, many different ways, and then everything gets a little bit easier.
Absolutely. That's a phenomenal point. I think this is something that might be common in a household, a husband and wife and maybe 1 or 2 kids already, but something like, well, I can't have sex until the dishes are done, the laundry is done, the kids are put to bed, the lunches are made. No. Those are all barriers that you're created in your mind. Those all might be things that have to get done. I'm not saying that they're not, but create a different story. And yeah, you'll have unlimited opportunities and potential solutions.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I can really resonate with, and I don't know exactly why it is that, but I can really resonate with this, and this needs to be done. And part of me feels like all of these things need to be tended to before I can take pleasure in us, before I can think it's my turn to just relax and do whatever it is that I want to do. You know, all of these things, at least for my feminine energy, all of the things in my life that I think need to be done start screaming at me in a way that I can't pay attention until they're done. So part of me sometimes has said, I don't know if I've ever told you this, John, part of me has had thoughts that, you know, I would be more apt to having sex if John would just make sure the dishes were done before he went to bed. If he just took some of these things off of my list. And you know what? It doesn't work. I think instead we need to think, if I'm in a relaxed state and if I, you know, feed my relationship, if I have passionate sex with my husband, I can put things in the proper perspective and the proper order of importance. Because really, when it comes down to it, if it comes down to dishes, vacuuming, you know, picking up all of these things and, you know, that whole to-do list that we tend to put on our plates, if instead we had, number one, make sure that my relationship is in tip-top order, make sure that my connection with my husband or my wife or my partner is in the most pristine condition, everything else will fall into place. And honestly, maybe it's not as perfect as that. It's definitely a lot better than the reverse order.
Great point. I love it. So what is the difference between sex and making love? And it's not a song. I mean, it might be a song, but
Bow, chicka, wow, wow.
But it's a question, a legitimate question, right? What's the difference? I believe the difference is the connection, the emotional connection and the passion that you share with the other person. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I would say that it's dependent on the situation. Obviously, if you're in a long-term, committed, intimate, loving relationship, then you want to be making love. Now, there might be times where you have sex, but if you're single, you might be saying, making love, it's crazy, man. All I want to do is have sex. Because there's not an emotional connection, a deep sense of knowing the other person. And anybody that's in a deep, loving relationship will probably tell their single friends, like, no, man, making love or a deep and intimate connection is way better than sex. And if it's not, I think you're doing it wrong. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think that one of the biggest components, at least that I can think of or that I've felt in the past, is the fulfillment that you get from it. That's probably just a different way of saying, like, you know, a deep emotional connection. But sex with someone that you maybe kind of care about, or that you maybe sex with someone that you don't know, you know, when you're single and you're kind of out there just experiencing life. When you get into a deep relationship, there's a connection that fulfills you in a certain way. You know, someone who really loves you is helping you achieve a feeling that they actually want you to feel. They want you to feel good. They want you to have confidence and know that they love you. So yeah, fulfillment comes to mind.
I'd say the difference between sex and making love fundamentally comes down to whose needs are you trying to meet. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with sex if it's a surprise or somebody wants to spoil the other person and it's all about that person. That's a phenomenal thing to do, and I think everybody should do it in relationships. But making love is about meeting the other person's needs. If you go into sex in your relationship thinking all about you, you might not be saying that, but that energy displays, that feeling gets crossed to the other person. The other person picks up that their needs are not being met as a priority, that they are not the number one priority. The way that somebody says something and a response that happens to it shows and indicates that it's all about the other person. And then it turns into a transaction. My needs and your needs, not our needs and not your needs. If it's all about you, that will slowly disintegrate the value and the sanctity of that connection that you share. So if you're going to have sex, if you're going to have a quickie, if someone's going to surprise the other person, great, do it, absolutely. Because when something is all about you and it's ignited by the other person, it makes you feel special. It's like a birthday present. It's like a surprise dinner, whatever you want to say. But that deep connection, the way that relationships flourish, is through making love. It's through meeting the other person's needs. It's anticipating what they might want or knowing what they like because you've listened to them. You've experienced them enough. You know that they like X, or when you do this, they always give you a positive comment or thank you for something. So pay attention to those things and integrate them.
Yeah, also to touch on, after you have been able to find the beauty in meeting your partner's needs, not just focusing on your own, there's something quite stunning about having your partner come back and show you that they've paid attention to what it is that you have maybe asked of them or showed them that you like, because then it kind of comes full circle. You have put effort into your partner. And this part that I'm talking about is more the dessert. It's something that comes after. It's something that comes after you've put in effort and cherishing your partner.
Well, I definitely love dessert. And oftentimes I like my dessert before my dinner. So whatever you're selling, I'm buying. I know Crystal didn't have a lot of long-term relationships of deep, intimate connection before we met. And we've had this conversation before. And I kind of realized when we were talking about this podcast episode that in previous long-term relationships, it was all about me. And I didn't really know that at the time. I thought that was just normal. And through our relationship and growth and perspective and looking back, I realized, holy crap, like this is probably a big reason those relationships failed, is that it was very much about me and it was very much transaction. My needs get met, your needs get met. And if they don't, my needs still get met. Whereas now with our relationship, it's about us and it's about her. How can I get her needs met? How can I fulfill her? How can I excite her? How can I, create more joy, passion, excitement, pleasure? These are things that, go through my mind now, which was a huge shift compared to my previous relationships, because I want her to feel like she's the most important person in the world, because she is the most important person in the world.
Yeah, no, a really great point to touch on. And if you, as the listener, want to learn more about bringing back that spark in your relationship and just pumping up the passion a little bit, go check out our episode 13, Igniting the Passion, and listen to that and get some ideas about how to bring passion back into your relationship. So yeah, this topic turned out to be a little bit of a longer episode than we expected. So we're actually going to have a part 2 coming out next week. So watch for that. Thank you so much for joining us for our episode today. It's been a blast. It's kind of nice to talk about something that's a little bit more taboo. And if you've heard some of this background noise, our little guy's starting to wake up here. So we better wrap up.
All right. Have a world-class day and a world-class week of sex, you freaky animals.
Stay connected, everyone.
We started this podcast because we are both extremely passionate about personal growth and development. Without fully understanding the benefits at the time, we actually began seeing a counselor at the beginning of our relationship to gain tools and learn more about ourselves. That eventually led to multi-day workshops, physical books, audiobooks, and as many other resources as we could get our hands on, because we saw such massive results. But we want to take you on a ride and share some of our most important lessons and discoveries that have made the biggest impact to us.
Whether you're single, looking for love, or have already found that special person, we aim to be the #1 resource to help you design your world-class relationship. For more information on topics and to join the conversation, please visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/world-class relationship. Join us next time for another episode of Intimacy Exposed.